Hey folks, Andy here. As always, I hope you're fitting well. Right, this little beaut came into me for a setup. It's a 2025 Gibson Les Paul Standard in a no-burst finish, and it was bought, I believe, last year from Anderton's in Guildford in the UK. The owner has had it for a while, he's played it a bit and just wanted to get the setup checked on it, so happy to do that. So first things first, plug it in and give everything a check over, and yep, the pickups work, all the knobs do what you expect them to do, the switch does what you expect it to do. No nasty crackles, pops or snaps, so that's all good. So first thing to do for a setup is get the guitar in tune. Now typically I would put a new set of strings on. These have not been played very much. They still sound good and lively. They've got no dents or divots in them. They've got no corrosion on them. And quite honestly, your guitar is going to spend more time with played in but fresh strings on it than with absolutely brand spanking new strings. So I thought I'm going to do the setup in a condition that it will spend most of its life, so I'll use the strings that are already on there. If there were any signs of pitting, anything difficult about tuning the strings, if the intonation seemed wildly off as you play up and down the neck, I would simply replace them. But these are in good shape, so I'll just go ahead and use them as they are. So get the strings up to tension, and of course, as the strings tighten, they are trying to pull the neck forward, so that the neck is fastened to the body up to this point, and then the strings are basically trying to pull it in a direction like that. The truss rod down the neck helps to counteract that, and so what we need to do is to set the truss rod tension to balance the string tension properly so that we get the required amount of relief, the required amount of bow in the neck. Now, there's a lot of debate to be had about how much relief or bow you need in a guitar neck, and some people, John Suhr for instance, reckon that you can get away with either nothing or very, very slightly more than nothing. The simple truth of it, I believe, is that the thing that you absolutely cannot have is back bow, because if the neck is curving backwards, so the strings are not straightening it out, then you're going to get choking all over the neck. You cannot live with that. So I think we need a little bit of neck relief to allow for the fact that as the temperature and humidity changes, if the neck tends to straighten or pull backwards, then we're not going to go past that straight point and into a backward curve. The other thing is that when we play our guitars, if we hit them quite hard, a little bit of relief in the neck gives a bit more room for the strings to vibrate. It changes the feel of the action in different places on the neck. If you imagine if the neck was very exaggerated as it curved out there, what we'd have would be a fairly low action at the bottom end of the neck, and then the strings would get further and further away as we went into where the bow of the neck was. So there's a bit of science in setting them up, but there's also a little bit of art and a little bit of actually getting it set to suit the player. If you're a heavy hitter, a little bit more relief is probably a good idea. So I checked the relief on this one, and the way I would do that is come down to the body fret. Some people will say to go further up, but honestly, the neck is fixed into the neck pocket up until this point anyway, so this bit of neck's not contributing to the bow. And I'll put my thumb there, I would fret at the first fret, and then as far as my fingers reach, I don't really care if I'm going into the 7th, the 8th, or any fret around the middle, and just press it and just tap it. And I want to see a little tiny gap. You can sometimes hear, we probably won't pick it up, but you can hear a little click as it actually touches the fret. And it's maybe about the thickness of a playing card, something like that. I used to capo, press, and then use feeler gauges to check the measurement in the middle. And honestly, you can do it by eye. As long as you've got a little bit of a gap, you've got a decent starting point there. So neck relief needed about a 16th of a turn, tightening, just to true it up a little bit, and all good to go from there. So having got the neck relief done, the next thing to do is to check the nut. If the nut is high, you will not get a good action on your guitar. If the nut is low, then you're just going to grind the strings out against the frets. And again, nut height is one of those things that different people have different opinions on. The John Suhr take on this, and John Suhr is something of an elder god when it comes to guitar neck setup. And his reckoning is that if you press the string down at the 3rd and then press the string at the 1st, you should have the tiniest, almost imperceptible gap between the fret and the string. That tells you that the nut slot height is right. I looked on the Stu Mac site. Stu Mac make luthier tools, and they've got some sort of very seriously talented people working for them. and they have a slightly higher recommendation. I think they're doing the 3rd fret and then about 15 thou gap there. And Gibson simply say set the action at, I think it's the 12th fret, and then measure the gap here. This guitar actually came out of the case absolutely slap bang on Gibson's spec. Now, my personal Les Paul has a lower nut on it. It was set up by Bill Puplet, rest his soul. Bill was an absolute master of this kind of thing. I have a lower nut, a higher action. This guitar plays absolutely fine, so I figured I would leave the nut height alone. Just to say that the slots were nicely cut. They all slope down from the fingerboard towards the tuners, which is what you want, so that you get a clean break along the front edge of the nut. And they're all nice and smooth, they're nicely shaped, there's no binding, anything like that. So I just put a little bit of lubricant in there, restrung, and got on with it. So the next thing to do is to set up the action. Now, the owner of this guitar asked me if I could take the action a little bit lower than the standard spec. Says, yeah, we would have a look at that. And ask him about his playing style and about how he feels. So the lower the action and the lighter the strings you play, the more likely you are to have fret buzz. And some people are very sensitive. I hate fret buzz. Some people don't care as long as it doesn't come through the amp. He prefers not to have fret buzz, but he's not quite as spooked by it as I am. So that's fair enough. That's good if we want a low action. Now, as we lower the action, all the other setup features start to become more and more important. High actions are nice and forgiving. Low actions, everything's got to be right. So that's why you have to have your nut height good and your frets have to be in good shape. And one of the things that we do to check the fret condition on a guitar is to put a gauge. I've just got a playing card here, but just put a gauge across 3 frets at a time. And what we're going to do is see if it rocks. So if we've got 3 frets spanned and if the gauge will rock like that, it means that the middle fret is high. And we can do that in between different sets of strings and moving up the neck. As we come up the neck, obviously the frets get closer together, so we end up moving to a shorter face on the gauge. And the frets on this guitar are good, so no work needs to be done there. The edges of the frets, I'll just say, they're nice and smooth, which is kind of lucky because as this has got the famous Gibson binding on it, and this binding has little nubs that come up to the ends of the frets, it makes any work that you need to do on the edges of the frets. It gives you nice smooth fret ends as long as it's good, and if it's not, it gives you an absolute nightmare trying to fix those. On my own Les Paul, which I had refretted, the frets actually go across, the edges of those nubs are cut off, and the fret actually lies across the top. You'll see that quite a lot on refretted Gibsons. So this is a nice feeling neck, it's in good shape. I started to lower the action, and the action got lower and lower. Guitar still plays fine everywhere. Eventually it started choking out where the strings were hitting the back of the bridge humbucker, so I lowered the pickup. Now, because I've got fairly chunky fingers, I like an action that's high enough that I can get my finger a little bit under the string when I want to bend it, so I don't feel as though I'm pressing the strings hard into the frets. In this case, I was going lower than I'm comfortable with, but the guitar, it took a low action and seemed to play quite cleanly. But I then wound the bridge up a little bit, and to do that, you just slacken the strings, turn those knurled nuts anti-clockwise, I mean, 1/16 of a turn at a time to raise the bridge, tune it up, and eventually you just reach a point where the guitar sort of suddenly just becomes so much more alive, and that's where I've left it. What we will do is, when the owner picks the guitar up, I'll spend 10-15 minutes, just get him to play it and make sure that he's happy. It will take a lower action if he wants it. We can come back a little bit if we need to do that. Once we've got the action set, the final thing is just to get the intonation sorted. And the intonation is done on a guitar like this by moving the saddles on this bridge backwards and forwards. And the idea is to try and get the guitar as in tune as possible over as much of the neck as possible. So with all those other bits done and sorted, we tune the guitar up. And there are different ways to do this. I made a series of videos a year or two ago about guitar setup. I can't actually remember what I advocated in those, but there are ways to do it where you check the harmonic at the 12th fret against the note at the 12th fret, and they should be the same. There are ways to do it where you check the open string and the 12th, and again, you want to make sure that the note is the same. In that case, it's an octave different. what I've started doing is playing either the 3rd and the 15th, or the 17th and the 5th, simply because it means that you're fretting the notes at both ends. And if you have got a grip like Guy the Gorilla, then if you're pressing super hard here and you're pressing super hard here, you're basically evening out the effects of fretting pressure as you go along. And also, it feels as though it takes any discrepancies and sort of spreads them over a bit more of the neck, which is always a good thing. The intonation on this guitar was very good. I simply had to adjust the B and G strings by the tiniest amount. And yeah, we were all in there and good to go. Now, intonation is affected by action. So when the guitar's collected, if we change the action, I will very quickly do an intonation check on there. Now, considering that this guitar was manufactured, presumably stored, shipped to a distribution point, it crossed the Atlantic on a boat, I'm guessing. It then got shipped maybe to a distribution centre in the UK. It then got shipped out to the dealership. It probably then hung on a display rack for a while and then got bought, and then it's been played for a few months and it's come out this close to being perfect. I'm really surprised. So we don't often get to say this, but nice one, Gibson. Good piece of work done there. I did wonder if the fact that it's so good is because of what Gibson shipped or because the dealer did a setup on it. And I had a look on the Anderton's website, and interestingly, they do say on there that because of the number of guitars that they ship, they don't, as a routine matter, do a pre-delivery inspection to make sure that they're up to spec. And a couple of thoughts occurred to me about that, and this may be somewhat unfair, but it did seem that if your problem is that you're shipping that many guitars, just maybe have another tech who can do this, because, you know, by the time, it kind of seems that by the time somebody is actually spending enough money to get that written on a headstock, it would be nice to make sure that they're going to get a good out-of-the-box experience. But in this case, it's all worked out absolutely beautifully. Nice guitar, it plays really well, looks fantastic. Stick it on the scales, £9 6 ounces. A lot of people will tell you that that is really too heavy for a Les Paul standard. It's just a few ounces heavier than mine, but you know what? It balances, plays and sounds absolutely beautifully. So who cares, eh? Okay, any questions, stick them down below. Happy to see if I can answer them. Look after yourselves. Until next time out, I'm Andy Picker. I'll see you then. Bye for now.